So hi.
Do we dance
Hello.
or do we sit?
Something like that.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So it was kind of a giant mood board that we saw here, isn't it?
Usually, you know, when we come to places like this, first of all, I'm used to standing up and holding these big keynotes and a lot of pictures behind me. Now we're going to have this informal chat.
Yeah.
So that's new. The other part which is new is that we start off with showing actually a retrospective, things we have done. And I think it's good from time to time maybe to have a look upon that, because things that we showed here is a lot of different events like this, chatting about design and why we talk about design at IKEA. And also, it's actually showcasing more than 50 different collaborations that we have done during 5 years. That's quite a lot.
That's a lot, yeah, definitely. In 5 years, yeah. That's many, many collaborations. And as we have understood, collaboration is one of the key words.
It is, and it's about actually changing stuff in the world, and to, instead of just talking about it, do it. And I think that's the typical IKEA way.
Yeah, and changing, this is also one of the key words. What do you want to change and how do you want to change things?
Yeah, but you could change so many things, but I think it's always good to start with yourself. So the actual starting point for this work was to try to change IKEA from within. And by doing stuff and leading by example, to show that it's actually possible to do those things that everybody said was impossible to do, and to also find new customers, and to reach out and solve new problems that we hadn't solved before. So that's the very background.
And there is this famous sentence, be the change you want to see in the world.
Smart.
Yeah.
I think also something that we, democratic design that you introduced so beautifully, Simona, it's the common language, because we saw the need to have a common language that we all could unite around within the company, but also with all the people that is involved in this massive collaboration.
But it's actually one thing, because when we started out, everybody talks about democratic design as a tool for designing, the 5 different pillars. But the biggest change within the company has come from out of everybody being able to talk about design and have this common language. And, you know, so if we want to chat about this table, what's good about it, what's not so good about it, we come from the same starting point. And that's always good, instead of someone being a little bit above just because they're designers.
Well, the thing is, at the beginning, it's like a motto, and then at the end, you have to implement it.
A little bit like that. Yeah, you have to, you know, if you say that you're going to do something, then you have to do it.
And it's hard.
It's a promise.
I know.
That's good.
It's a hard work. And so one of the questions is, how does IKEA collaborate now? How does that work?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, should I start?
Yeah, you could start. I mean, like, you were onto it right from the start, that, you know, we need to start doing things that make sense, things that have meaning, because this is a company driven by vision, to create a better everyday life for the many people. And we start there, and then focus in on the problems that are interesting and meaningful to solve. That's a great starting point.
It is, and personally, I've always started out with, you know, one question. Does it really have to be this way? And usually it doesn't have to be that way, so you have to take it on.
It's a simple question, but it has a
super simple
real
question.
meaning behind.
And it's also engaging people, so does it really have to be this way? No, and if you feel the urge to change it, then those people come along.
But that's also the thing, that you have to go out of your comfort zone, and it's hard.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know if I have a non-comfort zone.
Big one. You have a big one. I think also another part is that, you know, how do you do it then? Because, you know, if you want to go about these things and ask those really tricky questions, then you need to trust each other. Because you embark on a new journey into the unknown, which things you don't know about. And then the trust is a key thing.
And I think it's also trust and curiosity. Those two things go hand in hand. You have to be curious on the same thing, so to solve the problem. And I think that curiosity is also the good thing here, is that those two things are important for the personality of the company and the persons also. Curious persons are people that you want to be around, because they tend to ask you questions. It's not just, you know, I'm curious about you. So why do you have those colors on you today? You know, what's the choice?
Good question.
It's a good question.
Energy.
Energy. It's about energy. Yeah, that's why I wear black.
Yeah, well, I have a bit of pink lipstick. If you want, I can go grab it.
No, and honestly, I think it's the same thing for companies. Also, you overcomplicate stuff. If you want to build brands, why don't you just build it as a personality?
Exactly.
And if you do stuff that will build the brand, Don't talk so much. Do stuff instead.
I think just reflect on the people you like to be around. To be interesting, you have to be interested. It's simple as that. The most boring people are those that only talk about themselves.
Yeah, but then you have curiosity, but on the other hand, as you were saying, there is trust, and trust sometimes you really need to build it. It doesn't just come like that.
No, and then you come into how do you collaborate actually? What's the very reason for collaborating? And I think that's, if you build trust, it has to come from generosity. Because there's also the big difference between co-branding. There's a lot of companies doing co-branding. And there's a, let's put ourselves together with someone who's really cool, and then we become cooler
so what's the difference?
by rubbing off. Collaborating, as we talk about it within IKEA, is about solving problems and do that together and come from two different entities that usually don't work and put those together. So it's finding those creative resources that we don't have within the company that could be added to us and do something that either of the companies couldn't do themselves. And I think that's a big difference to co-branding, actually.
But how do you pick then, okay, let's collaborate with them or with this guy, or?
It varies a lot, I would say. Usually, it depends. We have so many different things that we have taken on, and since we are maybe too curious also, it's been about, just take some examples. We were super curious about what is actually happening within the creative parts of Africa, in the urban areas of Africa. And then we were looking, and that was just by accident, actually, that me and Ravi Naidu, who I know is sitting here somewhere. Ravi, shout out. Yeah, we met at the jury for what design can do in Amsterdam, and just starting out chatting, and something happened there, and then from there we took off. Actually.
I think it's also about whoever you work with, you have to be, you want to learn things from each other, so you bring different things to the table. Otherwise, it's like, if it's a total match, well, that can be good, but it's quite boring as well. So the friction part is really key for collaborating.
And friction is about team dynamics. Everybody, when you talk about design, you talk about how do you work with design, the design process, design thinking. I heard it too many times, actually. For me, it's more about how do you put teams together that is interesting, that creates a friction in between the parties within the team, because then you have like a sparkle. What happens when you put like an artist together with someone who's worked with textile all his life, together with someone who's like a brain scientist? Poof.
So what you're saying is like having a couple where there would be no yelling at each other, that would be so strange.
I think that's actually, I've been married for 28 years. It's been my success story is that we fight every day.
See? That's what I meant. You need a good fight to make things go on.
Yeah.
Exactly. It works.
Yeah, but I think, as you're pointing out, it's like some things can't be measured. I think the big results of a good collaboration, sure, nice products and maybe economic results, but I think for us at least, it's bigger than euros or likes. It's about actually learning, and in the journey we're on, it's a long-term thing. We say that democratic design is a way to make things better, and if we continually learn, we can get better at making things better. So that's what's in it, and that's bigger.
And that's the whole goal, anyway. And do you have some concrete examples you want to give about the collaborations?
Something that we have done so far. I think we've been on to for tactility, for instance, is one of those things that we, when we started out, one of the very first collaborations with was actually together with Ilse Crawford and her team at Studio Ilse. And that was about senses, We talked about senses that are usually that you don't reflect upon when you are doing design. So then we talked about surface treatments and surfaces and how we can come to something that looks comfortable and also feels comfortable. And it doesn't have to be like a comfy sofa, because it could be, what about the table? What's the comfort of a table? And there we investigated new materials and new techniques that was super interesting. Coming from that, actually, we went further into working with other senses, like now we're working with scents with Byredo, and to explore how actually memories are connected to your home, and how could you put that into sense. Because if you ask someone about explaining, what about your grandma's home? What do you remember from that? Then they start off talking about, yeah, she was doing buns and cinnamon buns. I remember the smell of that, or the smell of Christmas, or something like that. So it's hugely important. It's not just something that you put on top. It's actually part of the experience of a home. That's been one.
Yeah, but also, music. We are doing endeavors in music, and I think you see in the collab with Sonos out here, the first samples of that. And I mean, that's also a good example of collaborating with someone who knows something that IKEA don't know. We don't make speakers, at least up until now. And I mean, that's a special expertise that we need to gather. But we know a lot about life at home. And we, as you were on to, we know how important music is in home and in life at home, and sound.
But what is so interesting is you actually going over the limits, over the boundaries, just further and further, and you going into universes that are not yours, actually.
Yeah, on one hand you could say that. On another hand you could say that we have been lazy. We should have done this far. It should have been done years ago, because it's pretty obvious that music is something which is important to people's homes. So how do we go about it instead of just keeping on making furniture? So what we are actually looking for is what is important for people in their homes to make their lives better.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have to explore far more than pieces of furniture, or how you put pieces of furniture together in something called a home.
Yeah,
it's bigger.
I was just thinking, when you are going through IKEA as public, you don't think that you're going to find this kind of device in your store. Maybe you just think, okay, that's furniture,
Now you're turning opportunities into problems.
It happens. No, but you see what I mean?
But actually, that is part of it. I'm half joking, but it's half true as well. Some of those things that we have invented and tried out in a lot of those, both collaborations and new areas which we have product developed for, maybe we didn't think about how to meet our customers in a good way with those new things. So if speakers just popping up in a store full of sofas, is more like strange than obvious.
That was
so you need to work all the way through the chain there, and to learn how do you build that meeting point, and how do we also maybe share our intentions with what we do from the very beginning.
Right.
So how we connect, and what Matias has been working a lot with together with me is actually how do we work with communication. So from the very beginning.
Make it part of the design.
Totally transparent with what we do. Because at the end of the day, it's a little bit like, I think the hard part, one of the hard parts is I think that Ilse Crawford put it in a very good way. It's a couple of weeks ago in a Surface magazine there, when she said, it's sometimes hard to justify beauty in a world run by spreadsheets. And that's part of the job, as well. So how do we justify what we do in something which is highly efficient sales machine out there, when it could be a little bit harder to grasp.
But the good news is there is no more limits. You can do everything then.
You can't. You still have to be, we still have to make democratic design out of everything that we do, so it actually reaches. It's not a good idea to have a good idea that doesn't reach a lot of people. That's not IKEA.
Well, that's the thing. It has to be reachable for everybody. Everybody has to be able to have it at home, or choose it, or pick it, or live with it.
Yeah, but if it's just for the few, it won't change very much either. And I think that's the difference also. So that's why it's so good when we work with sustainability and we take it on in a good way. If we say that we're actually going to be fully circular by 2030.
Right. Wow, that's
a big change if you think of the responsibility of having 1 billion visitors in our stores every year. If we could change their lives to become more sustainable, that's a really big change to the world.
Yeah.
But just us adjusting our value chain within IKEA with 200,000 employees, it's of course big, but not as big as nudging people's behaviors into sustainable behaviors.
And that's also because you believe in that theory, if I can say so.
I don't know. It's not. I don't think it's just a theory. Actually, it's a way of life.
It's more. It's not the right word. It's true. Yeah,
and it's also when you talk about circular. It was so nice to hear you talk about circular. But I have a problem when we always talk about circularity in terms of economics. It's not just economics. It's not the circular economy. For me, it's more like a circular lifestyle that we talk about. Yeah. Parts of that life is economy. It's so much more actually, and. Us being sustainable at IKEA, we've been fairly sustainable without knowing for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Because the way that we create our low prices is to have really low cost. To have really low cost, if you work with design, then you have to have a non-wasteful behavior. And waste is the mother of all
Or
non-sustainable
it's not
work.
always like that. It's like that at IKEA, but there are many companies who just create things that cost nothing, and they produce it on a way that you don't want to.
But we really hate waste at IKEA because someone has to pay for that waste at the end of the day.
Yep.
And usually it's our customers, and it's not the idea of IKEA.
Exactly.
But also, why we do an event like this, it's about spreading this idea, to make other companies or, designers to start thinking this way, because we think it's a good way at least. And
Of course,
yeah.
of course.
So it's about sharing and that openness again, returning back to that, because that's, part of the world which is democratic, right? It has to do with involving more people. And I think that's something we're looking even further into, to take that even further, to include more people into what we do and the way we do things.
Were there any concrete examples you wanted to mention on new collaborations?
On the collaborations, taking further, yeah? You want to start?
Yeah, but I think you can think of it in many different ways. One way to be super efficient in production is, of course, 3D printing. You do what's needed and nothing more. That's a smart way. And there we have a collaboration with a company called Unique, and that's wonderful and all. But the really interesting thing there is, again, it's not just about that. It's about life at home and people having the right to a good everyday life. And we realized that we missed out on doing good solutions for a lot of people. Actually, how
2
many?
billion people. There's like 2 billion gamers out there who actually have a crappy ergonomic situation.
Exactly.
And that is something that we could change.
So we thought, that's a good example. There are clear problems we want to solve that we think can have a huge impact. And let's do it in a new way that can be interesting and also super sustainable if we do it right. We're not there yet, but we're exploring it.
And there we work together with also some of the experts, which are the users. So we're actually reaching out to the community of gamers all over the world through Area Academy, who's actually educating gamers into a better gaming environment and also being more competitive for the future. So that's a completely different way for us. So it's engaging more people into it. I think you're going to see more of that within IKEA for the future also, that it's the way that we worked with collaborations has been together with different partners, different companies and so on. But I think we're going to involve even more people for the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially different groups of users. Because you can see that another new collaboration we're doing with Adidas, that it's about, how do you do sports at home? Because there's a big challenge in doing that. And then we realize they know a lot about sports. We don't. You have sporty shoes, but okay. We need to engage with the users, the real people down there. And I mean, at IKEA, we've been doing home visits for ages. But I think we can expand that even further, because we have done a few collaborations, you could call them, if you will, or events, which is like life visits. So it's another way to go about it, engaging with other type of people.
But it's as Simona was on to before also, that the thing is, when we ask people about their homes, they don't even talk about just what's happening within the four walls. Actually, someone living in Berlin said, okay, so I sleep in this room, but my living room is out on the street. That's where I engage with all of my friends. So this neighborhood is my living room, and this is where I sleep. And then you have to be part of their total life. It's the same thing actually being part of if you're interested in music. When you are at a festival, a big festival like Coachella or something like that, then you're actually, that's your living room during that week or those days. And how do you go about that then? And how do you want that experience to be, and what is important in that part of life? Yeah. So we have been interacting there and trying to learn firsthand on site during these years, and I think that's also something that's going to be far more of, actually.
And as you said before, this is just understanding a lifestyle more than just a house.
It is, and also to trying out new things. I think it was when we did a big thing in Boston Calling, which is a festival there. It's one of the big festivals in the United States. And there we tried out our new, we've been famous for our 50-cent hot dog for years and years. And now we wanted to challenge that a little bit, because it's made out of meat, and not everybody likes meat.
Yep.
And we did then something we called the veggie dog, and it didn't look that good from the very beginning, but now it
How
does,
is it
actually.
now?
But the taste of it is like fabulous, and, you should try it if you haven't. And then we tried it out there and also got all of the, because when you are at a festival, what are you prone to eat? It's a lot of bad food and bad drinking going on there. So we were the alternative. And that was like a huge success, but also the interaction there to hear what people thought of it was super. And it's a so much faster way of doing research. And I could tell you, it's a so much more fun way of doing research as well.
Of course, yeah.
Actually, and also if you back out on that festival area that we designed, and consider that festival people's homes for a couple of days. You know, then we started thinking, okay, what do you miss in a festival? You look at the gigs and you love that, and you eat, super cool. But at some point, you want to relax, sit down and just lounge and talk to your friends. So that, we made a small living room, you could say. And that was a function that was missing in that home. And we think that's going to be really something that we look into even more, because if you look in a city, what's missing? If you look in a high-rise, what's missing? And I mean, there are ways to scale what we call furniture design into maybe something bigger. We don't know what it is, but we're looking into it.
You're looking for
well,
it.
I think
you're going to find it.
What you could hear is like the stretch from talking about and researching people to actually going more into super users and to see what happened there. And also turn our design teams into super users. And actually, some of the pictures here before we went up on stage was actually from the team that we sent to Utah to live there in a space environment, in a capsule, like emulating life on Mars. And the idea of that was to help them to understand, you know, how real small space living, the extremes of small space living. So that was the first trip, living in a small space capsule. The second trip was to live in a capsule hotel in Japan, in Tokyo, just to be there and to design on site. Like we have always done within IKEA, there is a way that we do stuff that we are saying that we are designing on the factory floor, close to production, to understand how could you make that production line more efficient through design. How do we design on the home floor? And how do we design for the retail floor as well, so it survives our stores. But now going into the extremes. And then you could come up with really strange things there. I have some, sound like an old man.
You are.
I am an old man. These are, I don't know, you can't see them down there, but maybe you could go up here and have a look. These are like first samples of a thinking that came out of the Utah trip. And also a completely new way of constructing things and a new material.
Okay.
At the same time.
And that is?
And if you can see it like this, it's a scaffolding system. But it's a lightweight scaffolding system, because if you want to move a lot, then you want to have something which is easy to move with. So super flat pack is good. And also, light materials is good as well, light and strong. So what could be light and strong? Then we saw that we had a little bit of too much leftovers in veneer that we couldn't use. And then someone came up with a great thinking about how do you do cigars? You know, you roll them. So what would happen if we rolled veneer? We made a machine that could roll veneers into tubes. And it's, you know, at the end of the day, it was a super strong construction. So it's almost as strong as what you see here, the scaffolding actually made out of steel, but at a fraction of the weight. So it makes it easier to move with at the same time. And third, which I love about scaffolding, we always use scaffolding when we do things like this, is because it's not a ready-made solution. It's something that is, you know, it's not about manifesting IKEA's creativity. It's about manifesting people's creativity. So what you do with this scaffolding system is all up to you. You could do a sofa, you could do something like this, you could do like a big system to have all of your books or whatever you have. It's not said from the beginning. And I like that kind of thinking. Yeah,
the fact that you can keep on creating while you have the device.
And it's also actually really sustainable. One of the things that people have a tendency not to talk about when you talk about circularity is, of course, everybody talks about second life. And second life is most of the time that you could, grind it down, the materials, and make something new out of it. But actually, the best second life is if you could repurpose all of the components into something new without grinding it down or adding some kind of energy to it. So that was the idea of working with scaffolding. It's good for repurposing. It's actually the very idea of the sofa that we sit in, which is not a sofa from the very beginning. It's like a bed that you could turn into a sofa, into a lounger, to whatever. and it's really easy to repurpose over time.
Yeah.
So and the choices of materials here is a little bit more luxurious since it is aluminium, but it stands the toll of time. So you could repurpose it for 100 years without a problem.
It's really actually finding solutions through experience.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I guess that's the best way. So we've understood all the way you've come through and where you're now, but we want to know what's next.
We touched on it, I think, a little bit when it comes to involving user. I think, again, I want to mention this so far. You know, it's designed to be built upon, to be hacked, if you will, and that system, as you described, same there. And I think that making components, making constructions, it's like distributing tools in a way, tools for creativity. And if we could utilize all the power, creative power that is out there, then we think that's a good thing, because then it might not be IKEA that repurpose things or have the idea about exactly what it's going to be. It's probably going to be the many people, right? And that's
especially
a good thing.
people like you sitting here, all of the
Exactly.
young, new emerging designers, to rethink what could be done with those things. I think repurposing is one big thing that we're going to see a lot of, and thinking of that. So what is the Lego of IKEA for the future? Another thing is, I would say, the very topic that we have touched upon from time to time. And companies like IKEA are built upon how do we sell stuff. But what about the future when people don't want to own stuff, but use it? What kind of possibilities does that give us as a company?
Economy.
It's shared economy, it's leasing models, it's new business models. That means that you could design the stuff in a different way from the beginning.
Right. And so there is this other point we have to mention. As I know, you're living the team, Marcus.
Yes, I am actually. This is my last, performance or whatever as a head of design for IKEA. So I'm leaving, starting my own business again.
Really?
Yes.
Can we know more about it?
You can in 1st of October.
Really soon.
I'm going to work with what is really close to my heart, which is how communication and design comes together in a good way to actually change stuff in the world. So that's going to be the main topic that my company, which is going to be called Skewed Productions, going to work with.
And you're going to collaborate?
Yeah.
It's going to be all about collaborations and actually collaborate maybe with this old guy also.
Yeah, exactly. The way we see it at IKEA is that we expand the team now. So, it's going to be one of the collaborating partners. And I think doing so and, reaching out to even more people. One thing that's going to be key is that more people at IKEA is going to take on the creative helm, right? And lead that. And that's going to be a task for even more people. And as we have heard, there's not a lack of challenges. There's not a lack of creative people, for one. And the thing we need to solve is like, okay, what are the interfaces? What are the tools? What are the components that we all can use? And we think we got one of them at least, which is the common design language, which is democratic design. We think is a great starting point for starting to discuss.
Right.
And the other one is, what are the problems we're going to solve? If we can get together around that, then there's no limits to creativity.
And so you're going to keep on exploring?
Yeah. Simple as that.
That I certainly hope. That's not about me, it's about IKEA.
Already concrete projects we can know about?
You're going to keep it to yourself.
Yeah, we have shared quite a lot of them. We're going next week to Berlin to keep on working on a thing that we introduced in June, which is working on off the grid together with Little Sun. And that's also collaborative. That's a collaboration in itself, but there it's even more important to get together with all those users. Because all of us here, we don't know what it means to live off the grid. At some point we do, when we're in a summer house or something, but we want to connect and learn from people who really knows what it's about. So that's why we do it together with Little Sun, who has a great network and lots of knowledge when it comes to that.
I think also you're going to see more of actually us. We have worked with something we call democratic design for a while now, and more we come into also in collaborations with artists, actually, and the will amongst a lot of artists today to democratize art as well.
Yeah,
How do you
for sure.
reach out with art? And we think that art is important to people in their homes.
Yeah.
We know that for a fact that it's important. And how could we help out there as IKEA?
And
So you're going to see a little bit more of that as well.
that's something you want to push, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, it's about what's meaningful in your life. If we can't connect that to the home, then I think we have a problem, right? So that is something that we, are going to work on with making sure those connections are there. And art is one thing, music is one thing, food is one thing. So a lot of things on that.
All right, well, thank you very much for this presentation. Do you have something else you want to say before leaving?
Auf Wiedersehen. No, I don't have anything more to say, actually. It's been really lovely to come here, and big hugs and regards to the Swiss organization also, I think, for doing, you were the first ones out doing Democratic Design Days outside of Älmhult, where we started this journey. But you were the first one to jump onto the topic, and you've done your own version, which I like a lot also, inviting a lot of students and young people to share how we think and for others to share under the umbrella of IKEA. It's been a really generous approach, and I hope that you keep on doing it. That would be my last words.
Thank you very much. And your words? Yeah, you can give him some applause. And your words?
No, I just want to say that, if we can keep on focusing on, why we do things and be really, really clear about that and reach out to, this community in whatever way we can do it, I think that's going to be the future.